I'm Chris McDonough, a retired homicide detective. I've interviewed thousands of people, from serial killers to ministers. Welcome to the interview room. Hey everybody, welcome to the interview room. Wow. I'm pretty excited to be here. So grateful to each and every one of you. And my mod said, Chris, can you do me a favor? Please don't put the scroll up. I know you guys said that, but we just love you and we're so grateful for the hard work and the efforts that you at the last moment put up with me to say, hey, can we go live tonight so I can touch bases here? And so there you go. You get the scroll just for a little bit. Miss Sophia, Maui Girl, Teresa M, and Mimi J too. I don't know about you guys, but we absolutely love our mods, and we hope that you love them too in the TIR family. Always grateful to our subscribers, our members, our Patreon members. Without you, none of this is possible. We only ask one thing, that if you're not a subscriber and you're new to our channel, please hit that subscribe button now if you would. And then also hit that thumbs up during the broadcast. That's all we ask. Nothing more, nothing less. And you're all welcome here. All opinions are welcome. All conversation is welcome as long as it's respectful and mindful of our friends and neighbors around us. If you get a chance, reach out and touch somebody who may need you today. Somebody out there's needing to hear your voice. So if you could do that, that would be grateful. I would be grateful for that as well. All right. So we've got a lot to cover today with the search warrant receipt affidavit and the search warrant in of itself for the Washington State part of this investigation was unsealed, as everybody is aware of. And there's some pretty interesting things in it. I want to touch bases and give you some insight from an investigative position. And also then talk about, the relevance of some of the information that we see in this particular return receipt. 2 locations, one, his office. And remember, all people are innocent until proven guilty in the court of law. So at this point, there's an allegation that he committed this crime. The police believe so, and he's in custody for such. But he will go to trial, and so he is presumed innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. That said, what is the evidence that is stacking up? And just as I talked about early on, guys, when we started to look into this, one of the first things I said, one of the most valuable witnesses in this whole thing will be that silent witness, i.e. Murphy. And it appears in the affidavit, return receipt, that yes, indeed, we have indications of animal hair. And so why do I think that was such an important piece of the puzzle? Because I've worked cases where dogs have been in the house and people, there were allegations that they did the crime, but there was no evidence in any of their clothing or on any of their clothing or in their vehicles or at their home of these guys right back here. You know, when animals are very intuitive in relationship to their environments, and, you know, they go like this, right? Here, they smell, they see, and then they hear it. But this right here is extremely powerful. And I would submit to you that Murphy knew something was amiss, and we have evidence of that for in a couple of things, right? We see it in the first affidavit where we learned there was potentially video where a dog was heard barking. And we also have evidence of it now that the investigators felt that it was important to look and search for evidence of Murphy and or at least an animal. So the question is, and I have to ask Buddy, he's not talking, but he is leaving evidence currently. The question is for Mr. BK and his defense team, how are you going to get over that one? If that hair is animal hair connected back to the residence where Kaylee, Madison, Xana, and Ethan were taken, your guy's toast. You know, you can scream and argue and shout and jump up and down all day long as a defense team about the DNA, but somehow he's going to have to get that dog over to his house in his story, if that is the real deal. Because the only other way it could happen is there will be two arguments. And when I talked about this with Karen on Sunday night, they'll start blaming the cops. And juries are really smart to see right through that pretty quickly. You know, and so these kind of things, you know, these kind of ideas like this, could he have attended a party? That's going to be the only arguments that you can get. The problem with that argument for him is his attorneys are then going to have to admit that he was in the house. And that's not good because he didn't have the knife with him that night in the house. And so now you have to, you know, cross argue that the knife where he bought it, you know, and he incidentally happened to touch it at a knife show or a gun show or whatever. And that's how his DNA got on there. We're underestimating the brains of a jury. They're very smart. Most jurors are pretty smart. And you get yourself a good defense attorney or a good prosecutor, you've got a problem. So keep in mind that as we go over just a couple of things, and I want to just go over the evidence list. So let me grab the evidence list. And then I want to point a couple of things out for you. All right, so I'm going to share the evidence list. All right, everybody can see this. It's already been floating around pretty rapidly. Okay, the first thing they grab, and this, by the way, I'm not going to read, you know, the rest of the affidavit because all that is supporting evidence to get to this. And it's basically a cut and paste boilerplate from the first search warrant, with a couple of twists in there in relationship to the digital footprint that I keep mentioning that they've been searching for. And now, we see evidence of that 100%. And so he may be in that house with a lot of the things that are going on here. But remember, what they're looking for is not evidence that he was in their house. It's evidence that he took out of the house. This is a two-edged sword for BK, because there's a couple things going on here, and I think you would agree. And if you don't, that's okay too. With this receipt, what we see here is they're looking for gloves, and they found one of two, or one of many. And then we get into the Walmart receipt. Why is that so significant? Well, they tell us right there that it's clothing significant, the type of clothing. Now, what the Walmart receipt will also tell us is the date of purchase, the method of purchase, and who purchased it. And then we have, on item 3, 2 Marshall's receipts. We don't know what those are, but I would submit to you, and I want to show you something pretty cool. All right, if somebody has a jacket nearby, anybody, look on one of the tags. Again, I'm going to show this if you're new to our channel, for the RN number. RN number. Put it in the chat. Somebody give me an RN number in the chat. Okay, and then I'm going to have to change screens real fast. All right, well, somebody's doing that. RN number. Thank you, Maui, for putting that up there. You'll see it on your on the tags. Sometimes there are multiple tags. And okay, I've got one right there. All right, Victoria, thank you. 127458. So now I'm going to switch screens. I don't have multiple screens. All right, 127458. And this is why the clothing piece of this puzzle are important. All right, so this is the Federal Trade Commission database, and it's called the RN database. I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to press play, i.e. search. Okay, whoops, I know why. Okay, so right here we get the name of the company out of Seal Beach, California, that makes that item. Everybody seeing that? Okay. This is the power of an RN number. And it was manufactured for Affliction Clothing. Now, they have nothing to do with this case, obviously. We are just looking for an RN number. Okay. This is why in the affidavit, it is so important for them to establish what's on the receipts. Everybody tracking me there? All right, so let me pull this back. So now we can get to the place where we may be able to get video from Walmart. We may be able to get video from Marshall's and the times, which become very critical. Very critical. Yes, and this is a good point right here. You see, affliction clothing is a line made popular by MMA fighters. So now, just on that little number that we just did, this little experiment that we just did, we potentially also get a personality type. Do you see how powerful that is in what we call criminal behavior analysis? Just a simple little number. We now get somebody like Robin, who just put up, that's a popular brand within a certain set of individuals. So it's very critical. As Single Mama 4 says, I agree with you 1,000%. It's very critical. These small minutia details are critical. All right, so now we know they have receipts, because now it appears, based on what we see on item number 2, they're looking specifically for clothing, a type of clothing. So that tells us they have a lot more, again, that they're just not dropping into the environment yet. Okay? Into the environment yet. Number 4, the dust container. Bissell Power Force. Remember what I mentioned, the idea about taking the air filter on the car? Why that would be critical? This dust container is of the same importance, because now you can send all of that material, collected particles from the air, and see if you get any types of forensics evidence out of it. It's amazing stuff today. Now, this is also nitrate gloves. I looked them up. There's a variety of types. You know, they can be regular surgical gloves. They can be industrial gloves. They can be heavy duty gloves. They make them in various types of, millimeters. Some are easier to penetrate. They use them at, I'm sure a lot of our docs and a lot of our nurses here on our channel know exactly what type of gloves these are. But here's the other really important part as well. They have sometimes a powder of sort into the glove. Well, if they're using, systems like MVAC and any of that, those gloves pour during the altercation, then you may have skin cells that have leaked into the environment. And this is why, as we go down this list here, it becomes important. And the reason they use the word possible, because they're not experts who collected this. They are just collecting the evidence to establish its probability of being hair. And it's only validated when it's sent to the lab and forensic scientists look at it. Okay. So this is why the receipt says possible hair strands, 8 of them. Now, this number 5 was interesting because it sounds like it's a clump of hair strands from something. We don't know where they got it, but it sounds like they picked it up from a single source. Now, I have no idea what that could be. I mean, we could go on all day long and give a bunch of hypotheses, but we don't know. But we do know there are 8 of them, and they appear to be hair strands. And then number 6, a fire stick. You can search the internet all day long on a fire stick. And so that's when you start seeing, language in the search warrant about, tags, about identity tags in relationship to metadata, to validate that it came from the same IP and sources like that. And all of this information can be had and grabbed. And now my favorite. Murphy may have solved this whole case. Number 7, one possible animal hair strand. Man, I got to be honest with you. What if he did? How cool will that be if this guy goes down on the dog that was loved by everybody in that home, and he's the silent witness? If they match him to that hair strand, it's over, in my opinion. And this is why I said earlier, a month ago, I said the most important witness in this whole case will be the dog. And all of a sudden, Murphy's up at the top of the list here. Because I don't believe, if this guy is the alleged killer, I have said from day one, that this guy is not a serial killer. And for 2 reasons. A couple of them. One, obviously, is Dr. Picotto, who did the mass murderer database. I mean, from the Columbia University. I mean, the guy is the guy who holds those keys. He said only 12% go to become mass murderers. So I do believe, though, because this, I believe, is his first kill, I won't be surprised, though, if he didn't threaten to kill or take steps, down the path of, mentally and physically to prepare for this day and the day of this horrific tragedy. Because he's been thinking about this for a significant amount of time. And not just the Moscow killings, but just in curiosity as a whole. As Gray Cooper said, he's been going down this lane, for the what if and what would it feel like ideas. So I like the fact that law enforcement should be making concerted efforts to look at other cases for comparison through VICAP and NCIC. However, I do not believe at this point there is evidence that he is going to be a successful serial killer and that he just got caught on this one. And for a couple of reasons. I mean, this reason alone, if we look at Walmart and Marshall's, this serial killer's planning this case in his own environment, in his own neighborhood. The Marshalls is in his town or in the geographic area of, Moscow or Pullman in Washington. Same with the Walmart. If this guy You know, this guy's not the sharpest tool in the shed. Let's just put it there. He was studying criminology for a reason, because he's not a good criminal. And the dog may be taking him down here. Number 8 is another possible hair. Number 9 is another possible hair. Now, mind you, these are listed separately because they are coming from different environments and different collection points. So, give you an example. If you find a brush and you pull hair out of it, you photograph it, you collect it, you bag it, and you tag it. That is one item. Could be number 8, if number 5 is an example. Then you go into another part of the house, and by his desk, you find another hair. That could be number 7. So these are various pickup points where this forensic evidence is being collected. So we have a total of 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 separate hairs that will be sent to the lab for identification. And then 1 animal hair that will be sent to the lab for identification. And now we have number 12, his computer tower. Number 12, the computer tower will be sent out and it will be, dissected. And so much information can come out of that. Now, you have number 12, A, B, C. 1 dark red spot collected without testing. And then you have a separate B, 2 cuttings from uncased pillow or of reddish brown stain. Larger stain was tested, but they don't give us what the presumptive test result was. It appears it is a pillow without a pillowcase. And it appears that it has reddish brown stains on it. The reason the investigator does not put its blood is because they don't know. But here, they did not want to disturb this stain. So they did not test it, which I think is really interesting, because what that tells me is they're trying to preserve DNA. And anything is possible, right? Remember we talk about that? But the fact that they put into the affidavit and the return search warrant, collected without testing, means everybody stood there and the case agent said, okay, don't touch it. Just collect it. Meaning don't add anything to it. Let that be done at the lab. Good job on their behalf. Outstanding. And now we have B, where there are apparently 2 stains, because it says the larger stain was tested. So that means even if they tested it, there is enough to continue to go to the lab. And it shouldn't be an issue. It should not be an issue. Okay. And then, of course, C, 2 top and bottom of mattress cover package. Separately, both labeled C. So they took both the top and bottom of a mattress cover with multiple stains. 1 was tested. 1 was tested. So here's a thought on the first one up top, A, or excuse me, let's go to B. One of the things that, I have that we have all talked about, Dr. Mercado nailed it. And by the way, Sunday night, the panel's coming back. I got Gary, I got Ann, and I have Greg coming back in Sunday night. So don't miss it. Greg and Gary are all fired up about this because, some of his predictions have just fallen right into place. And if you haven't seen that, if you're new to our channel, go watch Dr. Mercado's and Dr. Burgess and Greg Cooper's analysis of this guy. They nailed him. But so now we have interesting evidence here because it came from a pillow, uncased pillow. So here's the hypothesis. Is this his pillow? Did he take it from the crime scene? Is it their pillow? Somebody's pillow? If it's one of the victim's pillows, he's toast. But it also gives us a deeper insight into his mental capacity. Back to that, what would it feel like idea. Now, we don't know, okay, whose pillow that is. We do know that they felt it was important to cut pieces of it out and take the pillow as well as the red stains on the pillow. And they also felt it was important to take the top and bottom of a mattress cover and to separate them and package them independent, but mark them both label C, which would correlate to their evidence list. So when the photographer, for an example, the CSI, you have both of these items together, and the case agent or whoever is the crime scene manager says, hey, let's package this as a one set level C. So they go, okay, click, photo, measure, do all the things that need to be done, bag it, and tag it in separate bags, i.e. both labeled C, because they're coming from the same location. And that's the reason for that. But one of these items, and they don't say which one, has more what they believe stains on it than the other. So typically, it could be the top or the bottom, depends on, if the fluid has gone through, as it's saturated. I mean, there's 1,000 ways of thinking about this. But there was enough for them to take an independent sample. And that independent sample is probably sent into the rapid DNA lane. Same with the other ones. Item B, the larger stain tested is also rapidly tested. And so I will not be surprised at some point if we don't get word, as in the prelim, that they've got all of this data back in terms of from the lab and in terms of who it belongs to. Okay? Because I have felt that, the choice of the knife, this guy, let me just go over some of my notes that we talked about a while ago. Even Dr. Gary said that this guy, he's got a grudge. He's holding a grudge, and that he's ego-driven. He would ego-driven killer, and I can't disagree with that in any way, shape, or form. I am still convinced that we're giving this guy way too much credit. That, even though he studied, serial killers and, Ted Bundy, or, he's a Ted Bundy fan and et cetera, et cetera. And by the way, Francine's coming too. So you're going to really absolutely love that. If you're not familiar with it, Francine lived next door to Ted Bundy. And he used to babysit her kids. I tease her all the time. So let me get this right, Francine. You used to drop your kids off with Ted, and she'd be like, just leave, knock it off, leave it alone. But that's what we do, right? We're funny. Yeah, I think this is just, the first brush at this. But getting back to the point of what this guy was all about, he had a temper. He's somewhat paranoid. And to quote Dr. Gary, he said he'd be somebody you'd want to stay away from because he's a little peculiar and he's hot-headed. And I'll bet you this guy can hold a grudge for a very long time. About a week or two before they nailed him. And, I don't know how much closer you can get to this guy because now you're starting to see some of these other pre-incident behaviors starting to come out of the woodwork, even his own writings, right? And what they're attributing to him, this Papa Roger guy, and the visual snow and all of the other stuff that this guy is putting downstream. It's beautiful. But I don't think that he was a sophisticated Ted Bundy type. I mean, Ted Bundy emerged over 5 years. He came into his own, 1974 and 1979, and where he really started to blossom. And some of his downfall was obviously the sorority girls in Florida. But at the same time, he shifted his victimology. And that victimology went to his last victim, and that was the 12-year-old little girl. So even he was getting nervous about getting caught because he'd screwed up a couple times early on. So I don't see that BK or Brian is of that magnitude, sophistication, because he's planning, if he was in any way, shape, or form a serial killer, this guy is planning it by going to Walmart right down the street from his house. Ted Bundy is miles ahead of that. Dennis Rader is miles ahead of that. Ridgway, miles ahead of that. All of these guys are miles ahead of where this guy was. Now, was he on his way? Again, this is where we go, yeah. I think he was headed that way. But I think a lot of what he was processing is this voyeurism fantasy problem. And that it's a real tough leap to go from a fantasy of a single murderer to, fantasizing about killing 4 victims. And now Ted could do that like that. But I think it's going to be unfolded at some point that this guy had a lot of these, fantasies. He was, void of conscience. He was, he was just, left out there. But I think more importantly for him is he just hates women. And he has a grudge against women. And that his stalking, is an indication, and his signature, which we talked about on Sunday, is an indication of where this guy was in his head. The fact that he was being rejected by women around him. Jeffrey McDonough, impulsive. Yeah, thank you. That's a very good one, Willie. He is impulsive, and that is why the crime scene is such a frenzy. He approached the crime scene very methodical, right? And pre-incident, very methodical. He's almost mechanical. I've talked on Nancy Grace's show about how mechanical this guy is. And that it was his downfall, because he was kind of void of any type of environments around him. In fact, even in his writings, where he talks about, living in an environment of oblivion. And then he correlated that back to the video game. And, I know that I went back and did a little research with the movie with Tom Cruise, Oblivion. And, the robotic aspect of, how this guy saw his life. And I know that Dr. John over at Hidden True Crime was talking about, even he was disconnected from the real world and living in this fantasy world. So we've got Dr. Burgess, who Ann comes out and says, you know what, this guy is I don't think he's a serial. Gary comes out, who nailed this guy, and he starts it off, remember, by saying, hey, this guy's a mass killer. He's killed 4 people. The incel aspect of this could develop. It could develop, but we don't have enough evidence of that yet. It's still too early, okay? It's still too early. I think he got caught up, certainly, in a bloodlust that evening. After taking, the first 2 victims, when he goes downstairs, or we actually don't even know the sequence, but we know at some point, we know that all 4 of them were taken. There is evidence that logically it could have started upstairs, but there's evidence it could have started downstairs. So I think we just don't know yet. And I think as we become more, more impatient with the authorities, and as we get, the system to take care of itself, we'll have those answers. We're going to have those answers. But what we do know is, based on some of the statements made by the authorities early on, the case the House presented itself as, just totally disorganized and a bloodbath. So that would cause me to think, and I've had many of those kind of problems, where we used to actually say the knife went on full auto. That was an actual term we used in homicide, because it was so crazy, the event. And it looked so crazy that, it looked like it was an organized situation, but then you sit back and you realize, no, this may have started out as an organized attack, i.e. a targeted attack, but then it spun to a disorganized attack, an extremely disorganized attack. And that's where you get the frenzy. So does he come downstairs, or does he go upstairs as a matter of practicality to eliminate the other 2 victims? We don't know. But that is certainly, something to think about. I mean, what do you guys think? Right? It's organized chaos. I love it. Thank you, Jerry. That is a good point. Organized chaos. Yes. And I think this is where, this guy is at. So I don't think the calling card theory is accurate. I'm not saying it isn't. I could be wrong, but it's highly unlikely. One of two things happened. Obviously, as he left the sheath there either by accident, or if it was placed there to confuse the investigation. Equal to what I think is a very curious piece of this puzzle, what we talked about Sunday, and that is the DoorDash situation. The fact that all of these environments near him, i.e. the Jack in the Box, less than a 0.5 tenths of a mile from his front door, and the fact that Xana gets an order at 4:00 in the morning, and the cutoff time for ordering that item or items, if it is the Jack in the Box items, and we are, again, theorizing, the cutoff time is 02:45 in the morning, 2:45 a.m. And it just so happens the other idea is he goes off the grid at 2:47. So there is only one other potential explanation that the defense would come up with about the dog hair. And I see it floating by, and Karen and I talked about this about 2 hours ago. Did I not say people would say that about the dog bed outside? Okay. Well, that's a problem for our guy, because then that puts him at the house. And either A, he has to take the stand and explain why he's at the house, because that evidence probably won't come in unless there's a foundation for it. Okay. It would be very difficult. Okay. So again, going back to the calling card idea, the mistake of not cleaning off the DNA, in my opinion, on the snap, he didn't anticipate that he had not done that, in terms of he had forgotten to do it. And the fact that he left it there, the defense is going to have to find a knife show and the exact table and the exact salesperson that saw him inadvertently touch a K-Bar USMC knife. And then somehow that knife was purchased by somebody else, the real killer, and put into the bedroom next to the girls. And then simultaneously, explain away that, well, there's only one cell tower that, inadvertently pinged 12 separate times that we know of. And my guy just happened to be in the neighborhood. Okay. But now you may have a single strand of dog hair. And if that comes back to Murphy, man, how cool is that? How cool is that? That these guys, the silent witnesses, and I had a big case in San Diego, those of you who know me, where I sat and I said to the DA, because there was some blood transfer on a transient shirt from a tripod. And the DA at the time, Paul Finkst, says, Chris, he said, you're not buying this. And I said, no, it's not that I'm not buying it, but the guy is a random schizophrenic. He's like Pigpen. And somehow we have to put him in that house with the mother, the father, the brother, the sister, the grandmother, and a dog. And I said to him, I said, Paul, the most important witness in this whole case hasn't been interviewed. And he looked at me and he said, what do you mean? I said, the dog. This guy was allegedly in that house with all the doors and windows secured and locked, has 3 centimeters of blood, which the criminalist says, George Durgan, he may have done that while collecting the clothing. But this guy has no dog hair on him. Why is that? And why did the dog just totally ignore him that evening? And the moment I saw Murphy in that affidavit was in the house, it just a rush of information came back to me that said, got him. If that dog hair is any way, shape, or form around this guy, he's toast. He's done. And let's cross our fingers and pray that that evidence comes back correctly and that it does belong to the victim's dog. And if it doesn't, then he gets the benefit of the doubt. But at this point, it's in an affidavit in a homicide case. And it's gone to the lab. So we have an idea there that we then now have to say, okay, well, what's moving this guy? And I keep going back to, I believe it will emerge, and it will completely emerge at some point. There will be much more weirder encounters with women in his boxes of history. We see some of that, flowing through in some of his conversations, but we'll also discover, I believe, and Greg and Dean, Ann, Gary, we all are of the same opinion that there's going to be underlining fetishes that will present themselves. And they probably, there will be a variety of them, but they emerged over years and years to get him to this point. And I would submit to you, they're going to be small behaviors like, small burglaries, car burglaries, peeping Tom, those types of problems where even maybe he was taking, women's undergarments, right, as part of a fantasy of discovery. And I'll bet you there's a tremendous amount of pornography on his computer. And that he was the kind of guy that liked to brush up against women and kids, just kind of walk past them, but walk and get into their personal space. That's that guy. That's the kind of guy this guy will probably be revealed as. Okay. Very, very real. Very real. So that's why it was so important to start focusing on his signature, not necessarily the MO, because the signature will often reveal the identity of the suspect, because it's a reflection as he goes beyond the behavior necessary to commit a crime. We see evidence of that even today. The fact that they may have only found just this list of items that we just saw a little bit ago. The fact that he was cleaning his car. But he didn't anticipate cleaning the vacuum cleaner. You see? And that goes into the column of, this guy is not your sharpest tool in the shed, because the signature would show that there were adjustments in relationship to how he committed the crime. I still believe that he did not anticipate Ethan. And I see that. I saw somebody report it, the shoes, but I didn't see that in the return receipt. So I don't know where that came from. So be cautious of that information. Be cautious of that information. All right. So we've got a couple of questions here. More of a comment. Doesn't seem like they found much. Yep. They found enough, though, I would submit. Expose. Good comment. Katie Berg, as far as the item seems right, is there anything they took that might not be in the warrant? Do they have to list everything in the document? Yes, they do have to list everything that they took out of the house, and they have to leave that receipt. And by the way, one other thing that you just reminded me of, I just want to share real fast. Remember we talked about the other day, I made kind of a big deal about if there was additional blood, on the sheath, that you would kind of want to, you'd have to pretty much reveal that to the judge. And, some folks were like, no, I don't see that, blah, blah, blah. And so I just wanted to point out what the investigator said to the judge. I'm going back to find it here. And by the way, a lot of this is just, boilerplate, right? But they went for the kitchen sink, except for the kitchen sink. Okay. See here, the victim or from Kaylee's dog. It's right there in front of us, everybody. So they're looking for evidence of Murphy. How cool is that? Right? They want to know if Murphy knows, i.e. the silent witness. There he is on the top of page 36. He was wearing during the attack. They're looking obviously for clothes, mask, shoes, but they don't say that they collect the shoes. Now this right here, bloodstain pattern resulting from blood droplets released from an object due to its motion, i.e. cast off. That's what they're saying there. And they're saying that cast off could have potentially got on the individual. They're listing him there. That's all new stuff. But I wanted to find that one point. But anyway, if I can't find it here, I don't want to, keep dragging it on. But it basically says, Your Honor, out of respect for the court, and then he talks about the various types of things that he would want to collect, and also the types of things that may or may not be on the items that they're trying to find, i.e. the sheath. Hang on, let me see if I can find it. Everybody doing well? And I'm not on the comments page here real fast, so I can't see your comments coming in. Forgive me. All right, this is basically a repeat of the first one, which is typical. You want them to match up. All right, well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back and find it again. Do you know where it's at? Why was the document released now? Karen just is asking me a question. I guess somebody put that up. I'll come back to it. I don't want to miss it here, miss you guys' questions. Why was the document released now after being sealed? Because the court gave them an option to argue why it should remain sealed. And initially they said it was for the protection of not only the integrity of the investigation, but the witnesses, i.e. the two girls who survived. And if any other information that got out, that would put their lives in jeopardy and potentially could put officers in jeopardy. And that's usually tied to if there was a confrontation with a suspect. So the court said, okay, I see your logic there. So we're going to seal it and keep it sealed. And at a certain point, though, because all the other information was released in the arrest affidavit, and the majority of this affidavit, i.e. search warrant, is similar to that, we're going to have to release it into the public arena because they have a right to know. And so basically, I believe that's what the judge did. And he acted reasonably. And it was supposed to be released in March, early first part of March, but for some reason the judge felt that it needed to come out today. And so he did. He cut it loose. And that's where the DA probably went back. Well, obviously, DA went back and said, hey, no need to hold it here any longer. We'll let the public know. And so that could be the only or one of many reasons. They would have to be hairs that obviously not his to take it for testing. Correct. Well, no, they can take any hair. Most likely long strands where they still take shorter hairs. They take it all. They would take it all. Great, TK. Great question. Yeah, they would grab all of it. Anything that they felt could be evidentiary in nature, they would grab it. Okay. Thank you, Brahim. Let me go back to the next one. So kind, JP. Always impressed with your work. The case of a lot of evidence. The only thing that can get in the way is reasonable doubt. Let's hope not. Totally 100% concur. Thank you. Could he have a hormone problem in his brain which affects the control of him stopping himself? You know what? That's a question for Gary on Sunday. So, Deborah, I'm going to ask him that myself for you on Sunday. Remind me. Can they match the dog hair to Murphy? Absolutely. Absolutely. Dogs and humans can be matched. Humans can be matched, and so can the dogs. And wouldn't that, how cool is that going to be? If it is Murphy, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. The silent witness. The silent witness. I love this little guy already. And I hear he has his own Instagram page. Let's go blow that thing up. Light it up. Can I explain signature in a nutshell? Yes, absolutely. In a nutshell, a signature is reflected when an offender goes beyond the actions necessary to commit a crime. So when you see behaviors at a crime scene and they were over kill, for an example, that's a signature. Adjustments at the crime scene, i.e. not anticipating Ethan. How does a suspect put that together quickly? That would be a sign of a signature. Inserting themselves into an investigation, not only which he has, because he signed up to teach cops about, forensic digital evidence. that is a sign of a signature. Okay. Whereas remember, an MO, a modus of operandi, is to ensure that the crime was successful. We're not seeing that here. To protect his identity, that goes into the MO category. We're not seeing that here. And then to affect his escape, we're not seeing that either because he's in custody. Now, Ted Bundy, you would have more MO than you would signature. And so the types of signature you would look for at one of Ted Bundy's scenes would be based on fantasy because his was driven through sexual deviant behavior. I think there's a sexual component to this with Bryan, but I think his knife was symbolic of that inability to function. And so that knife is somewhere. Okay? And that would go more towards a signature. Okay? I hope that helps, Pink. And there's a lot of other academic approaches to this, to the verbiage that I could go on here, but you'd have to come to one of my classes and I could show you on a PowerPoint. That said, let me grab some more of these. Ethan came to investigate the sounds. That's possible. Absolutely. Do you think BK had any idea the other girls were in the house? If so, would he have killed them too? Did locked bedroom doors save them? If so, glad he didn't hurt them. I believe he knew that house, and I said this early on, was occupied by young adult women. And that he has spent a considerable amount of time, going down the mental path and the physical path, i.e. preparation for that day, going back and forth. And we see evidence of that based on the minimum of 12 pings into that environment. Okay. So I think he was headed that way and that he'd been thinking about killing for a significant amount of time. I said this earlier on today. And when I talked to Greg about it, Greg agreed. His thought process was, this guy was going down the what if and what would it feel like lane. And I concur with that assessment at this point, based on what we know about him. So it's going to be interesting to see what type of social interactions he was having pre-incident. We're getting some that, he projects this persona of, law enforcement in some ways. He projects this persona of, outgoing and, conversationalist, but he's got to be the only one in the room that has all the knowledge, which is kind of a, yeah, buddy's out of service back here. He just solved the crime. Him and Murphy. They just solved the crime. I mean, he's out of service, as they say, 10-7, right? He's out. I love this little guy. But so we're going to see all kinds of things emerge. And by the way, I am not a profiler. I don't pretend to be a profiler. That's for other people. And you're not a profiler unless you've gone to Quantico and have been trained to be a profiler. You can call yourself a profiler all day, but you're not. Okay. Just because you hang around with heart surgeons doesn't make you a heart surgeon. Okay. For some people, I am not a profiler. I'm a homicide investigator, trained and in criminal behavior analysis and homicide investigation with an emphasis on pedophilia, guys who choose children for sexual deviant behavior during the commission of homicide. That's my expertise. I have testified as an expert and been voir dired as an expert in many courts in well over my 300 homicide cases that I have on the books. In fact, it's interesting. I grabbed my case log the other day, and this is what a homicide case log looks like. These are real victims. Michelle Tate, Robert Parker, case numbers. Dave Tabor, Theron Jackson, Jose Carbajal, William Johnson, Phoebe Campbell, Roderick Thompson. These are all murders that I worked. Okay? And it goes on for quite some time. This is what 13 years in homicide does. Okay? So whenever people claim to be who they are, have them show you the evidence. Have them show you the evidence, because I'm not a profiler. So guys like, that's why I hang around with Greg, and that's why I hang around with Ann and Gary. But that doesn't make me a forensic psychologist, a forensic nurse, or a profiler. And it doesn't make them a homicide investigator just because we hang out together. Okay. So we have to vet people on YouTube. That's the ethical thing to do. It's the right thing to do. The dog, getting back to Murphy and Buddy, I think the dogs just solved this thing. I really do. I really do. And so we're going to have to wait to see what the totality of it is going to be. Let's see here. Do you think they will come out with results if it's Murphy before June? Also, do you think he attended any parties, in your opinion? It wouldn't surprise me if he tried to chameleon his way into getting close to the girls. It won't surprise me. And you know, we can talk about that on Sunday. That is a great thought. It's going to be interesting to see what Gary says about it. And do I think they'll come out with the results before June? I think they'll have the results before June, but I don't think we'll hear about them until the prelim. The professor, do I think the professor hit a trigger on him? It could be. I would submit to you, based on conversations that I have had with experts, they are of the opinion that he even may have even had fantasies of killing her. That's going to be an interesting piece of his evaluation. That is going to be an interesting piece. Thank you, Cosmic. You're so kind. You're so kind. Thank you so much. Won't that be interesting, though, to be a fly on that wall when he gets evaluated? I am honored that you're here, Victoria. Thank you. Karen and I and the TIR family, we are grateful that you're part of it. That's for sure. So the black glove, Karen just sent me a note, says, talk about the black glove. All right. Remember that day, it was Thanksgiving Day. I was up in Idaho working on another homicide, another case. Embedded with an agency. I have been for 3 months. I've been up there working. And we had Thanksgiving off, and Karen says, let's go up to where this went down and get some film. I said, awesome. As we get there and I'm walking up that hill, my radar goes up and I see this, what appears to be a glove. And what's hysterical for me is the internet has me planning the glove. You can't make this stuff up. You know, it's like I want to go to federal prison. You know, so I figured I'd bring my wife along that day and Buddy, and the three of us can get hooked up and thrown into federal prison. Anyway, getting past that, for obvious reasons, I was standing where everybody else was. I mean, even poor Nancy Grace got beat up for sitting at a table in front of a crime scene that probably every news network in the country was in front of and in the exact same spot. She just, she had a table because she had a crew and they were working late hours, and everybody else was standing, and they beat her up. So anyway, that said, it's crazy sometimes, right? So I look over and it's like, that glove? And I looked at Karen and I said, is that a glove? And she looks over and goes, I think so. And so I went a little closer, not getting past the crime scene tape because I'm not going to trial for anybody, i.e. getting in the way. And I go, hey, and I called the officer who was sitting in his car. Come here. And he comes over. He goes, what's up? And I go, hey, take a look. It was partially covered in leaves and snow, and so you can't really get a good look at it. And I wasn't about to get a good look at it because I didn't want to, I didn't touch it. I didn't put it there. And I said to the officer, I said, hey, you probably want to take some pictures of that. I'm a retired homicide guy. And he looks over and he goes, oh, wow. That was his comment. Oh, wow. And I'm like, yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Thank you, kid. I know, right? But, YouTube is a blood sport. I have to laugh, anyway, that said, glove spotter. Yeah, exactly. So he comes over and he goes, oh, wow. And I said, yeah, you probably want to get your evidence, folks. And he says, yeah, I'll get my, our evidence techs and get them up here. And as a result of that, I walked up the hill there, and I turned around just to make sure he took it seriously. And he did. And they photographed it, and I videotaped it. And that's what's in the very first video that we did that day up there. And, the fact that I happened to see it, it's the luck of the Irish. I don't know if it has anything to do with the case. Again, let's be clear. I want to be clear. I have no idea. No idea. None. Zero. Right? Let's just hope that it was something. And if it belongs to one of the detectives, well, let's just hope they've sorted that through. Because that individual is going to have to answer why that his or her glove is on the other side of the tape when it was an active crime scene. And I shared the story. Well, I have the case number. I shared the story about the big gulp on the taxi cab. And that was one of our guys that put a big gulp on a taxi cab. And after we had processed the scene and they hit it with some fluorocene, that was what it was called. This thing glows on the top of the thing. And I look over and one of my guys, my friends, is laughing. And I go, what are you laughing at? And he goes, I got to tell you something. I said, what? He goes, see that stain? I said, yeah. Huh? He goes, that's from me. I bought a big gulp and I accidentally put it on top of the car. I said, you got to be kidding me. And he goes, no, I'm sorry. I said, all right, well, write it up, put it in your report. because you're going to have to explain it on the stand. And well, fortunately, the guy pled guilty, so he didn't have to explain it, but you'll go. Thank you for your service. Thank you, Deb. Thank you for your service. We're so grateful to our veterans. Oh, which, by the way, honey, can you grab my wallet for a minute? I do have to give a shout out to a Marine who, I just love this guy. He did some work on my truck when we were, okay, I'm going to put his card up here. All right, this devil dog, his name is Aaron Renton, Renton, and it's La Jolla Mobile Auto Truck Repair. Can you guys see that? I hope. I'm going to make sure it's okay. This is a great American. It's a veteran-owned business. If you're in San Diego, okay, give him your business. He is a decorated Marine from combat, and he has this company that he owns, that shop right there. So go over there and get him in, or get your trucks or your vehicles over to him over there. And also go see Richard if you're in the valley for Maya Miliete. Her mom was on the stand today in the prelim, and she did good, but it was hard. It was hard for the family. It was hard for the family. So keep them in your prayers. It's going in the right direction. There's still another week or so, that thing's going to go on. Todd asked, depending on type of vacuum, I'm curious why they didn't take the brush roller from the head of the vacuum. Also, eerie field pillow was used to muffle victim screams of pain, then taken as a trophy. Yeah, we talked about that as well, and I cannot disagree with you. I suspect they took the whole vacuum, meaning the whole kit and caboodle, as one little thing. And I can also feel where you were going there with the pillow, as possibly coming from one of the girls. And just think about the creepiness on that if he was sleeping on that, right? After the incident. So, man, that's a great insight. Thank you for sharing that insight. Thank you for sharing that insight. All right. Any other thoughts, everybody, before we launch off here? I've had you for an hour and 20 minutes. This Sunday, you have to get back here. Like I said, for the panel, we're going to reassemble the docks, and it's going to be a really, really interesting evening. So, as I always say, let's continue to be kind to each other, treat each other with a little more compassion and understanding. Start having dialogues, right? The one thing I love about being in the Airstream is you're forced to talk to people when you get out around the campfire or around the America. We need to get back to talking to each other and just kind of sharing our individual lives with each other, so that when these individuals like this are out there, we can flag them together and get them off the street before any of these tragedies like this continue. Do you think he did it alone? Yes, I do. I do believe that he was alone. And I'm going to jump over later on a little bit over to see my buddy Josh. He invited me over there at the lab. So if you're not familiar with the lab, get over there. It's the lab, LAB. We're going to hang out for a little bit tonight. He wanted me to, come over and just chit chat about a couple of things he's got going. And so that's where I'm going to go after this in a little while. So hopefully I get to see you over there. Until then, God bless each and every one of you. Thank you for all of our first responders, our dispatchers, nurses, doctors, all of our military folks, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for doing what you do, which allows us to do things like this. We are so grateful for each and every one of you and for your service to this great country and to your communities. God bless you. Let's go to Hawaii.
Hard working every day, I'm stressed out 24/7, babe. No timeouts, wish we could fly away. You and I go to our favorite place. Oh yeah, make special memories together. I'll be your company now and forever. I say we fly away, you and me, go to our favorite place. Feeling the sun on my face in Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. I need a summer breeze, some fresh air to put my mind at ease. No cares. You wanna come with me? Me and you go to our favorite tree. Are you ready now? We jump on a plane now. We're taking away. Yeah, we're taking away. Don't hesitate now. We're taking away. Yeah, we're taking away. We'll never come down. We're going away. Yeah, we're going away. You and me. Feeling the sun on my face in a while.